Welcome back to the Up and Coming Artist Podcast. Hi, I'm Ben. I'm an animator.
And I'm Christian, a photographer.
And we are talking today about my time as an intern. Do you know where that was, Christian?
Was that at Stoopid Buddy Stoodios?
Oh, what is Stoopid Buddy Stoodios?
Stoopid Buddy Stoodios is a stop-motion and 2D animation studio. They've done lots of classic shows like Robot Chicken. They made Buddy Thunderstruck for Netflix, Titan Maximum, Camp WWE, Hot Streets, and I believe they're working on the stop-motion for DreamWorks' Captain Underpants show.
So I had the privilege of getting to know Scott DaRos. How would you pronounce his last name?
Oh, no. Probably DaRos?
Yeah, I was saying it like that too. So I've known Scott for probably about half a year. I interviewed with him for a spring internship that didn't end up working out. Then I was able to take that internship in the summer. So I've known him this whole time. And I'm always looking at his last name like DaRos? Dude. And it weirded me out because I thought, okay, I finally got it. And then another intern said his last name, but said it a way that I had never even thought of saying. And I just went into an existential, like, oh, shoot, have I been saying his name wrong this whole time? And now I don't even know. So we'll just leave it at Scott for today.
Man, we are networking geniuses. Who exactly is this Scott DaRos?
Scott began his career at Stoopid Buddy as an animator on the college humor show Dinosaur Office, and he transitioned into animation directing for Robot Chicken Season 9, for which, and this is exciting, I didn't even know this when I was talking to him, he now has 2 Emmys.
Wow.
One for the Robot Chicken DC comic special, and for their newly released-ish Christmas special. And he actually got that Emmy with his wife, who was the art director at that time. So I thought that was kind of fun.
Hashtag relationship goals.
Scott is currently the co-animation director for SuperMansion Season 3, which is the show I got to help out on as an intern, which airs on Sony Crackle Online. And I'll give a link to that in the blog post on my website. So if you're listening to the podcast on iTunes, come on over.
Is there like a little imprint of you in that show now?
Maybe my thumbprints. This is a stop-motion show with clay. So, first thing we want to say is Scott is extremely busy as an animation director, and he'll get into that during our interview. We're very grateful for the time that he was able to give us. He took his lunch break to give me this interview because he was just that busy. And during this podcast, you'll hear a lot of clinking of plates and cars honking and things in the background as we recorded this in downtown Burbank. I'm once again very grateful for his time. And one thing I want to say right at the top is he name drops a few people that we both knew since I was an intern at the studio. One of them is Alex Kamer, who is one of the show directors on SuperMansion Season 3. Also have John Harvatine, who's one of the owners of the studio. Lindsay and Caroline, who were both heads of the puppet department for SuperMansion Season 3, as well as Sienuk Mariona, who is an amazing, amazing animator and his co-animation director on SuperMansion Season 3.
Oh, so many more people to interview.
And so many more last names to get wrong. Let's get into Scott's podcast.
So we were already kind of getting into my first question.
Okay.
Which was, what got you interested in art and animation? I know we were just talking about your parents, but yeah, you want to talk more about that?
All right, so, I mean, art in general, like I said, me and my mom would like sketch together and stuff, and that's what me and my brother and my mom would do for fun, just sit around and draw.
Oh, your brother too?
Yeah. And then one Christmas, I don't remember exactly how it happened. I think I was hanging out with my best friend, who's still my best friend,
Cool.
when we were little kids. And we used to make G.I. Joe videos. And we were always trying to figure out ways to like get our hands out of the shot. Because at first, we were just holding them and having them talk. And then we were trying to just like get our hands out of the frame and like hold their feet and kind of slide them into the shot and move them around. And then I think his dad gave us an idea to like hang them from fishing wire. And so we had these movies where the G.I. Joes are just kind of dangling in the shot, talking to each other. But then like one one time we were watching, we would always like watch what we did after. We were watching it, and in the background, we had a shot that we kept trying to do over and over again, and we kept repositioning a G.I. Joe in the background. So like we saw it moving, just because we were like moving it and stopping the shot.
Right.
We weren't doing it on purpose, but we saw it in the background. We were like, oh, we can do it like that. And then so I think I went home and I talked to my mom about it, and I had also just seen the Wallace and Gromit, the first one where they go to the moon.
Oh yeah, A Grand Day Out.
Yeah. So I was all excited about that, and then my mom got me like a brick of Sculpey, and then I just used the technique I was telling you about with a camcorder, just like recording and stopping and recording and stopping and just making these clay characters do stuff.
Oh, that's great.
And then I forgot about it. I did it for like a year or two. I was really into it as a hobby, just as a kid. And then I forgot about it, and then I went to school for illustration, and my illustration professor just randomly asked me one day if I was interested in like clay animation.
Oh, wow.
I was like, I used to do it when I was a kid. Why, do you know somebody? And she introduced me to this guy in Connecticut who was doing furniture commercials, but he used to run his own stop motion studio.
Oh, wow.
So he was using stop motion in the commercials, and so that's when I became an intern with him.
Oh, that's cool.
And then I got a job there, and I got really into stop motion after that.
Dang, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And that was doing those couch commercials. I know we talked about this last week.
Yeah. You know, it was moving furniture around in a big studio space.
So it was a full-size couch?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then it was finding ways to make the cushions like lift up and down to have them talk. And what we would do is we would just like take black VHS tape cases and just stack them underneath the cushions to have them lift. And we basically do like a couple of cycles of it opening and closing, and then just retime it later to go with the audio.
Yeah.
And then, but then also there was they have like a little mascot. He was a little stop motion puppet, Little Bob.
Little Bob.
So it's there was a little bit of character animation there.
Oh, that's cool.
And that's what I would get really excited about, was when we could do something where the character had to like walk or talk or, you know, whatever.
Yes. That's awesome.
The character acting that we were doing with Little Bob was really limited because we had to sort of animate him doing stuff, and then we used digital mouths back then also.
Oh, wow.
And so we'd use the same animation for a bunch of different commercials because we put out like a ton of commercials every year.
Oh, wow.
So the acting was very generic. It was just like raise his hands and gesture towards something and then just move his head a little bit. So it wasn't timed or acted to any specific audio.
Got it.
I really liked doing the character acting, but it wasn't juicy enough.
Right.
So then I would go home and I started making my own like clay puppets and animating dialogue and stuff like that just to see what I could do.
Well, that's awesome.
And that's sort of when I was like, I think I might be able to be really good at this if I keep going.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Were Little Bob and the puppets that you were making, were they like plasticine?
So Little Bob was a mix of clay and foam latex. He was on a wire armature, and he was very top heavy because his head was clay. And the wire armature was kind of weak, so he'd always kind of jiggle around. So when I made my own puppet for the first time, I used ball and socket armature, and I just put clay on top of that, which worked out really well. It was still pretty heavy. I wasn't super familiar with puppet building,
Right.
and I hadn't sort of explored the area of making puppets lighter, so it was just a bunch of clay. So the puppet worked out, but it was really heavy. So ever since that point, one of my goals as I make puppets is to make them as light as possible because they're so much easier to deal with. On SuperMansion, we have some puppets that are, really heavy.
Yeah.
And they look great and everything, but they're a little tricky to animate because you have to have them on a rig. So whenever I build one, I try to make it so I don't have to have the character on a rig.
That's awesome, man. So back then, too, were you animating your character with tie-downs, like on his feet?
I didn't know about that yet.
Oh, okay.
Little Bob, what we did was like he had foam latex feet and just wire loops, and we'd sort of slice underneath the shoe and lift the shoe and just like a screw, like a wood screw into his foot.
Yeah.
And I didn't really understand the tie-down system. And then when I made my own puppet, I thought I could just use these super strong magnets because I had a ball and socket armature, so it was metal. And I bought these magnets, and they're really strong and they're really scary. They're only like this big, but I still have them in my garage, and I don't know what to do with them really. But every time I want to like use them, it's like
using all your might. Yeah,
and then like being really careful that it doesn't go anywhere near anything metal, because I've had a couple of times where I just like put them on a table next to tools, and it'll just be like
everything goes.
Yeah, it scares the
everything
crap out of
goes
you.
to it. Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
And the magnets were all right, but it, you know, moving the character around when it's only fastened by magnets, the feet are like sliding around and stuff like that.
Right.
And I've got some OCD, and I really hate to see things moving that I don't intend to move.
Right.
So I give the animators at Stoopid Buddy a hard time if they don't tie down the characters tight enough and the feet are kind of swiveling. I can't do that.
Yeah, come on, man. Yeah. And now as the animation director, you can, right? Give a little
Yeah.
crap. Yeah.
It's something that's always driven me crazy, and so to be able to point that out feels really good.
You're just teaching them what you've learned, right?
Yeah.
So then you found out about Stoopid Buddy how?
So that's kind of crazy. The guy who I was working for, Mike Bannon, the guy who was doing the furniture commercials and used to have his own stop motion studio, when he did have his own stop motion studio, Harv, one of the owners, was an animator under him
Oh, cool. In Connecticut?
in Connecticut. Yeah.
Wow.
There's actually a few people out here who used to work under my old boss, the furniture
wow.
guy.
The furniture guy. What was his name again?
Mike Bannon.
Bannon?
Yeah. He's a wizard when it comes to stop motion. He knows everything about it,
Oh,
how to
really?
build everything. He knows all the little weird tricks that you learn through years and years of experience. So he's just like a good source of knowledge for stop motion in general. He knew Harv, and every now and then at work in Connecticut, he would bring up Harv and what he's doing in LA and stuff like that.
Oh, cool.
And so I was like, cool, I have a way in. And then so the time came where I wanted to do something else, and I made a reel out of this work that I had been doing at the furniture company. And I sent it out to Stoopid Buddy and a couple other places, but I didn't get anything. So then I spent a year doing my own animations, like in the bedroom of our apartment. And then I put together a reel that had like examples of character animation and character acting. And I sent that to Stoopid Buddy. And then Harv got back to me, and Alex saw it, and Alex got back to me.
Oh, cool.
And Alex had me sent me some dialogue and had me do a test over the weekend. And so I did the test and I sent it back to him.
What was the test?
It was a piece of dialogue from the show called Dinosaur Office.
Okay.
Or it was actually the dialogue of two characters, but I only had one puppet. So I did both characters with the same puppet.
That's cool.
I think that's a good way to do it, because if you can make a character look different just by the way they move,
Oh, yeah.
I think that's really important.
So Alex and Harv saw that.
Yeah, Alex and Harv saw it, they liked it, and they set up a phone interview. And I guess I did all right in the phone interview.
Nice.
And then they said, like, there's a job opening, and you can have it if you can get out here in, like, 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So it was
Quick turnaround.
It was a very stressful time. It was me, my wife now, my girlfriend at the time. You know, she had to drop everything. Her mom ran a dance business and she was involved in that. But she came out with me to LA.
Wow.
It worked out. It was crazy. It was only like, I think it was only like 3 weeks of guaranteed work.
Oh, wow.
It was like, depending on how I do, I could stay longer. So
Uh-huh.
it worked out. And I've been working at this studio ever since.
Wow, that's exciting.
Yeah, it was exciting.
That's like cool for to follow you when you only had 3 weeks promise, but just trusting, you know, like you and your skills.
It was a risk, but like I couldn't turn that down.
So from Mike Bannon now to Stoopid Buddy, you're an animator, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to jump forward a little bit just so I don't waste your whole lunch. So then you become an animation director, or a co-animation director, I'm sorry, which is what you are now. And so I'm just skipping a couple of my questions. So was that a difficult transition, and what does that transition look like?
It wasn't that bad. It was softened because I had been lead animator on a few projects before that, so I kind of got a peek into it. At meetings, I could speak up and suggest things, or I could like decide how a certain character acts. It just didn't involve any of like the managerial tasks that animation director does. And Alex is great, and he sort of was really good at giving me a rundown of what he expects or what he's learned the animation director position means at Stoopid Buddy.
Right.
And so it was a hard transition because, like I was telling you the other day, I'm really shy. When I was an animator, I didn't really talk to anybody. I would just go straight to my stage, animate, and leave. And then so suddenly I'm having to talk to my coworkers who I've basically been ignoring for like 5 years, you know. Not because I'm an asshole, but just because I'm not comfortable in social situations. So then I'm having to go on the stage and critique them and give them advice and stuff, and it felt really awkward at first. But once I realized how busy I was, and like I have to get to this stage, and this stage, that just went away because I needed to get it done, and so I didn't really have time to overthink it or get nervous or feel awkward about it.
Yeah,
it's just like this looks good. You need to fix like this part for the next shot. Okay,
cool.
And then move on to the next thing.
I'm sure your years, like you were saying, of experience and those projects that you were starting to lead really helped you like give that direction, right?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't completely trust myself at first because, you know, a lot of people out here are formally trained in animation. And I never was, except for when I worked under Mike Bannon.
Right.
You know.
The couch guy.
Yeah, the couch guy. He taught me a lot about fabrication, puppets, just all these different techniques and stuff like that. But the character animation was the only thing that I sort of felt like wasn't fully covered under him. So that was sort of just my own sort of acting scenes out, trying to become a better actor and recording myself and figuring out what things about a performance really make the character convincing. And so, so through those years of kind of trial and error, I would try things and they wouldn't work out and stuff like that. So I feel like I'm in a good place because I've tried a lot of stuff that I know won't work and a lot of stuff that I know will work, and it's not necessarily what you'd learn in like a typical animation curriculum because I don't know what that's like.
Yeah.
So I feel like I have some insight that maybe some other animation directors might not have.
Yeah, because you've had all that experience. I feel like that's more important in a way than just head knowledge.
Right, yeah. That's another thing that I'm learning as an animation director is like some animators were taught to animate one way, and so they have a really hard time straying from that one style because that's what they were taught and that's the way they think everything should be animated. So when you come in and you tell them like, you know, you should try doing like a squat, try doing it this way instead of the way that you've been doing it. It's like, really? Like that'll work? It's like, yeah, it looks fine. Like I've done it a bunch of times.
And I'm sure they're hesitant because they haven't done it that way, right?
Yeah, so they have a hard time trusting me.
Yeah. And that actually, I mean, you kind of were answering it. My next question was about like, what's the most challenging part of your job? Which it seems like you're kind of saying it has to do with dealing with people.
Yeah, it's just managing the personalities, and if somebody really isn't getting it, it's hard to figure out what route to take to get them there. I can't just give advice to everyone in the same way, because they respond differently to it. Some animators want you to be very specific with them, because they want to get it right. Other animators don't need much direction at all. It's just like, you know what's going on in the shot, right? And they're like, yeah. And you can trust that they're going to do it. But that has been the hardest part, for sure, is just knowing how to communicate these ideas that I've had working in my head for like 5 years. Suddenly having to translate that into words that make sense. But I already kind of have like a hard time talking to people, and now I have all these like techniques that I've been doing. I've only ever just thought about them and visualized them in my head. I've never had to like put them down on paper.
Yeah,
so that's been the hardest part. But I think it's going well. I think I'm getting better at it, and the results I think are there in the season of SuperMansion. I think all the animators are kind of dialed into what me and Sienna want them to be doing.
The season's looking really good. Like I've seen most of the other show. I haven't seen all season 2, but it looks like even the animation now is better than when you guys started on the show. It's awesome.
Yeah, I think so too.
That's cool. And there's a question I'd feel remiss if we didn't get to, and it's a two-part question. So one is, what exactly are your roles and responsibilities as the co-animation director with Sienna? And then the other one is, what's the most enjoyable part about it?
The tasks that we have to do have kind of like changed over time, because at the beginning of the season it was like organizing all of these thoughts into these guides for the animators so that when they start on the show they have a bunch of references to look at. We just wanted everything to feel organized. Previous seasons of the show, it was organized but not as strict.
Right.
Me and Cena kind of wanted to be strict about the animation. So we kind of got together and figured that out. Now we're sort of coasting off of that because, we had some struggles in the beginning to get all the animators on the same page, but now that's figured out. But now, we have to take over directing duties for Nick and Alex when they have to go to edits and stuff, because now that we have footage shot, they have to go to edits and voice or sound mixes and stuff like that as these episodes are getting put together. So me and Scenic have to cover for them on the floor, and we just basically have to make sure the animators have everything that they need on stage. And we organize the animation meetings. We kind of collect notes from other departments. If something goes wrong with puppets, Caroline or Lindsay will come and tell us about it, and then we sort of have to figure out what we tell the animators to try to avoid it next time.
Right. Like the wrist thing in one of the last meetings.
The wrists, yeah. We've been having a few ankle breaks, so we're probably going to have to go over that in the next meeting to tell the animators not to sort of fold the shins over the feet.
Yeah.
Because these puppets don't have toes, you can't lift the heels.
Yeah.
So animators are kind of cheating and just shoving the shins way over the foot, and it's breaking ankles. There's the other stuff I was telling you about in the car where some animators have personal issues or performance issues. We have to have meetings with them and figure it out.
Is that usually you and Scenic, or do you break it up?
It's usually me and Cena, because I think we're both still a little uncomfortable in that position. So we kind of need each other there to fill the awkward silences and
the
stuff.
confidence, yeah.
I think the most enjoyable part is suggesting tips to animators and immediately seeing them try it, in their next shot, and then they take it upon themselves to add on to those tips. Some animators started off pretty rough, but there's one in particular I'm thinking about who had really solid facial expressions and stuff, but the overall movements were kind of clunky and stiff. So I kept giving advice to try to make the movements a little bit more natural. And at this point, she's a really solid animator. I didn't think it would be this way, but it feels so good to see that happen. It's not just under my advice, it's also under Ceno's advice, but just us giving her advice, and she's grown so much just since the start of the season.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, and I'll skip a couple more of these questions so we can get out of here, because we got to get back to work.
Yeah, we're all right.
Yeah. So, being both an animator and now co-animation director, what are some favorite projects that you've been on, or favorite things that you've done? And then, why is Stoopid Buddy you found to be a great place to work?
So my favorite projects were Dinosaur Office when I first got here, just because it's the first thing I worked on, the first real thing. And that was really kind of a fast and loose production, and it was just a lot of fun.
Loose in terms of animation, or?
Animation, yeah, just the style of it. It was just very quick setups. The sets were basically all painted gray, and just crayons for details. So we'd be setting up the scene, and John Sumner, who was art directing Dinosaur Office, would just come out with crayons and draw details, a switch on the wall or something like that.
Oh, that's funny.
It was just fun. It was just overall a really fun project. And I was working with some other new people, so it was just fun to experience that together with people who were new to the studio. I've worked on some projects outside of Stoopid Buddy at Screen Novelties. I worked on a Halloween special.
SpongeBob?
Yeah, SpongeBob Halloween special. That was a lot of fun.
One of my professors, Mike Dietz, was on that.
Oh, he's one of your professors?
Yeah.
That guy's awesome.
Yeah.
I met him briefly, but I know him mostly from growing up and playing Earthworm Jim and Neverhood and stuff. Yeah. That was a fun project because they're very meticulous about style and sort of trying new things with the animation. Because, stop motion, sometimes it can be stiff because you have these puppets that are made and they have hard heads and stuff like that, and they're sort of a predetermined shape. But Screen Novelties, they sort of experiment with replacements and stuff like that for squashing and stretching and
cool.
Long limbs if they need to get rid of and stuff. Oh, I also got to work on a commercial at Stoopid Buddy with Gumby and Pokey, and so I got to animate I would say the real Gumby and Pokey, but it's really just they give you sort of a style guide of how to make the characters.
Oh, wow.
But it was cool to sort of imitate the style and stuff like that.
Like from Art Colloqui and all that. Yeah.
And Stoopid Buddy Stoodios is my favorite place to work because...
You don't have to say favorite place to work, but you know what I mean.
Well, I mean,
Good place to work.
I keep coming back to it because
Oh, got it.
it's such a great place to learn and get better at animating because there's so many different characters that you're animating. Like if you work on a season of Robot Chicken, you know, each episode has so many sketches.
Yeah.
And each sketch has a bunch of different characters, so you get to sort of experiment, try new things all the time. And I just feel like I learn a lot more when I'm at Stoopid than I would if I were to like spend a year working on a feature film.
Right.
Sort of being very limited into a certain style, with certain characters that have to be really consistent and stuff like that. I just like that Stoopid Buddy is open to experimentation when it comes to animating.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So kind of along that same lines, are there any developments that you see either at Stoopid Buddy or just in the stop motion industry in general that you feel would affect future opportunities or change the industry in any way? Or
The one I see right now is 3D printing. That's a big one. I'm kind of stubborn right now. I don't really like it because I don't like the idea of... I don't like sitting in front of a computer ever. And I also don't like the idea of like predetermined assets for the animator, like, you know, an animator working on a shot on a feature and they just have like a box of replacement faces that have been assigned for each frame. It's just like...
What's the animator doing then, right?
It's almost like the animator becomes a technician in a way. And like I was watching an animation yesterday where every frame was 3D printed of a character, so they just replaced the character each frame, and I'm like, I don't know about that.
Right.
I do like 3D printing for props and stuff like that, and for characters' heads, and then you can cast a 3D printed head and stuff, but I don't like the idea of depending on 3D printing for animation. I'm not super familiar with like working in a puppet department or something like that. You know, 3D printing, I've heard, it just winds up being a lot more like sitting there and sanding.
Yeah, that's what Brett was telling me.
Watching the printer.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I kind of like the idea of sculpting something from scratch, making a mold from that sculpt and stuff. Other stuff is, it's all becoming a lot more affordable, so a lot more people I think can get into it, where it wasn't really approachable. Even when I started, there wasn't Dragon Frame or anything like that.
Right.
But now you can get programs like Dragon Frame, and you have the tablets and stuff like that. So people can get started with stop motion a lot sooner, and I think that'll make it a lot more popular.
Yeah. Sorry to make you do this, but just because it's recorded, could you just go through like a 2-second explanation on what Dragon Frame is?
Dragon Frame is a frame-grabbing software, but it's so much more.
Yes. Give a commercial, yeah.
So as you're animating, you can see every frame that you've already taken, and you can see the live frame, which is what the camera is seeing as you're working. So you can see where you're moving the puppet and stuff like that, and go back and check the previous frames, make sure you're headed in the right direction. And it has all these functions like onion skinning and stuff that help with your animation. You can draw within the program if you want to like draw a path. Say you're doing a bouncy ball and you want to make sure the arc looks right, you can draw that path first. Whereas before, I remember drawing on the computer screens with like a dry erase marker. And then you can also control lighting from Dragon, so you can animate lights and do tests and program the lights so that as you're animating, the lights can be changing frame by frame with your animation.
Like the FLBO stages, for example.
Right. Because that shuts the beauty lights off and it turns on the lights that sort of make it just white behind the character.
Yeah.
And you can do the track reading in Dragon, the lip sync. It's just like a great all-in-one, everything you could possibly need if you're doing stop-motion animation in one program. You can also bring videos into the program so you have video reference as you're animating.
While you're animating. That's cool.
Yeah.
Do you use drawing feature, like drawing arcs and stuff like that a lot in your animation?
I use it a lot. I never want to be guessing while I'm animating.
Right.
I don't want to be like, I don't know if this is going to work, or I don't know if this is in the right place. I want to know all that before that's just the way I work. I like to sort of set everything up and then just knock it down. So like the actual animating part of it is kind of the part where I'm coasting. It's like the preparing for the shot is when I'm doing the most work. Just figuring out what. That's not the way everyone works. So that's another thing about being the animation director is explaining my process. That doesn't necessarily work for everyone. A lot of people like to just start and figure it out as they go. which I don't understand. But
yeah, but it's like you're doing the thumbnail stage, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Like before you go in there on your production.
Yeah. The only thing I don't like plan out before I start is the character's face, because I feel like as I'm animating and I figure out like how fast a character is moving from pose to pose, that sort of informs what their face is doing for me.
Got it.
That's like, when I was talking about 3D printing, that's one of the things that bugs me, is like I really like playing with the character's face. I don't want another person telling me what I should be doing with the character's face.
That's awesome. And so on that note, since we need to finish up, and you were talking about it kind of getting cheaper and maybe like easier for students to get started, like getting into Dragon Frame, like what are some things that you'd recommend to people like me or people like, that I'll be talking to at school who, want to get into this? I know that's not a easy one for the last question.
Yeah, let me think about it. I guess it would be not to get too caught up in the way everything is supposed to be done. Like I think a lot of people get caught up in getting all the right hardware and everything and getting really excited about really expensive equipment, thinking that they need expensive equipment to do a really nice stop motion animation. But I mean, really, if you have a good eye, you can make anything look good, And then also sort of experiment with the way that you do things, because stop motion there's still so much room for discovery in it. Like, a lot of people put up tutorials how to build a puppet. So then when you do that, your puppet winds up looking exactly like theirs. The same as everyone else who followed that tutorial.
Right.
So I'd say just don't feel like you have to do it the way everyone online tells you to do it. Because you might discover something new that nobody's done before. And to me, that's really exciting. When you can sort of figure out a new technique that nobody's tried. Like I said, it's like a small community, and not everything has been discovered in it yet.
Yeah.
Especially in like mediums like clay, which were really popular for a little while in the 80s, and now nobody does it because of things like 3D printing. Yeah, I would just say not to feel like you have to do it any certain way, and that you have to have all of the fancy equipment to pull it off.
Right.
You could do some really cool experiments just like with a phone and some really simple bulb lights or something like that. I guess I would also say character animation is a lot more important, I think, when you want to work at a studio. It's exciting to do a shot that's really dynamic, like with an explosion and a character jumping and stuff like that, but a lot of the projects at studios are really character heavy.
Cool. Well, that's awesome, man. Yes. Thank you very much, Scott.
Yeah.
And that was an interview with Scott DaRos? DaRos? You decide.
So what'd you think about it?
I think the thing I really liked about this interview was not one specific thing, but the way that Scott carries himself. The confidence that he brings to the table with his art. As a guy who has been somewhat trained in college to do photography and video work, I have a hard time having confidence in myself. And Scott's the kind of guy that I would like to be one day. The kind of guy that relies on his gut, but also knows that he has something to offer.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, which is my favorite part of the interview. And I think listeners at home who want to get into the animation industry might want to take this to note. And that is the first time that Scott applied to Stoopid Buddy and many other stop motion studios in the Southern California area, he did not get in.
Ouch.
Yeah, and I think everyone's experienced rejection at some point and at some level, but Scott didn't stop there. He continued to hone his craft for the next year. And when he applied again, he came in already co-animation director material. So he quickly moved up the ladder in just a handful of years. I think that's something that, as someone who wants to get into the animation industry, I want to practice myself.
Yeah, I mean, taking control of your craft, I think, is one of the best ways to build confidence in yourself, as well as to see genuine progress. It's easy when you're doing it for a teacher, but when you're doing it yourself and you're pushing yourself, it's harder to overlook the mistakes because you know that you're failing yourself.
Yeah, and that's a good reality. And I think that's why Scott's work is so professional. Which leads me to the transition of check out Scott's work, guys. You can find him at Scott, DaRos.com. You can also find him on Vimeo, same thing, vimeo.com/Scott DaRos. Or you could check out Stoopid Buddy's website for more of his work, as well as the work I got to do on SuperMansion Season 3, as well as all their great shows. So I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. Christian, you have anything else you want to add?
DaRos.
We're going to offend all our guests by not being able to pronounce their names.